It has the playmakers around him to compete in Nassau.
There's nothing more that I love on the Kark Report, where once a year I'll get on the phone. Hey, Kark, I just saw this incredible athlete. What do you know about him? 2 years ago, it was Jack Bruckner when he was a junior. Last year, I called you. I said, hey, this kid, Danny Vaccaro, he's a sophomore at Ward Melville. And what was so great, you had watched him on tape and you talked to all your college connections, but standing at the state semifinal at that beautiful Marist College facility, you were like, wow.
Wow. I'm actually good friends with his future coach, Kevin Warren at Georgetown, who's a Ward Melville guy. Was able to go back home and recruit Vaccaro, and I know he's tickled pink to get this kid down there at the nation's capital. And you know, Vaccaro is the total package. He's big, he's strong, he's quick. He could play attack, he could play midfield. You could give him the keys to your offense day one, I think, when he goes down to Georgetown. And Warren is doing an incredible job identifying top talent on Long Island, getting them, and I think Vaccaro will be part of that wave at Georgetown that gets this team back to Final Four type play.
Kark, is it fair to say, and all the guys you're going to talk about on this preseason look, that Pat McCormick from Hicksville may be one of the most interesting because we don't know that much about him right now?
You know, we don't, because Hicksville has just not really taken that step from good to great, but McCormick is a player that's been on the map for a while. He's a very skilled attackman that's going to the University of North Carolina. They've done an incredible job of identifying attackmen like McCormick that could play kind of multiple roles in their offense, because when you have a team like North Carolina that recruits at a national level, and it's almost like a Kentucky in basketball, you want kids that can plug holes, and sometimes you get these playmakers and all these alpha males that need the ball in their stick all the time. I actually think McCormick can go to North Carolina and fill a role without being a quarterback, even though he's the lead dog on his team right now.
You had told us a lot about Brian Willits from Smithtown East last year, and then what he did, he announced himself to the world with that 6-goal game in the quarterfinals of Suffolk Big Boy Lacrosse against West Islip. And while West Islip is not what they were in years past, last year, you do that against them, all of a sudden your name is gigantic. He's still just a junior who is through the roof.
You know, Willits, to me, is the Mike Springer, actually, of high school lacrosse.
Wow.
Watch tape on Springer, you really think you're watching Willits play, and they're both these big, long kids with absolute cannons. There's no kid in the tri-state that shoots the ball harder than Willits. I saw him this summer shoot on a radar gun, 105 miles an hour. I mean, this kid has an absolute cannon. If you don't press out to him, he's going to beat you from the outside with that long-range bomb. But he also does a nice job of setting offense up when teams approach him and play him just as a shooter. He's got some game where he can go underneath guys and dodge, too. This kid, though, you got to watch him shoot and how hard he shoots.
Your name ends in a vowel, right?
Absolutely.
So you got to be into a guy named Rocco.
Rocco.
Playing lacrosse.
I saw Rocco this summer as well at the same event, the Maverick Showtime with Willits. And Rocco from Northport, Sutherland, is a fantastic, calm, dodging attackman. And I say that, you know, some kids are rattled when they have defensive pressure and they don't know really how to adjust. When I watch Rocco play, he's so smooth. The game is almost in slow motion. His stick's always in the right spot. He gets teammates involved. He's a great dodger, but I also think he sets other people up with his dodges too, because he's able to really dissect the defense, and I love his lacrosse IQ.
You mentioned your boy Colsey before. He must have been miserable in the offseason last year, right? I mean, last year was the year that the Tigers of Ridgefield, they were going to win the FCA. They were going to win the Class AA, and they got neither. But he's got some guys coming back, and the buzz here, and you know me, I literally have just come off the basketball season. The buzz here in Fairfield County is it's Ridgefield's year. Is that true?
I think so. You know, you look at what Roy Colsey does. He's a good friend of mine, but he's also an incredible lacrosse mind. I mean, I'm getting texts from Roy Colsey when I'm doing college games, and he's breaking down different things that are happening in the college game. His head's always spinning. I think he's one step ahead of the curve in terms of just implementing new offenses and wrinkles out there. I think Colsey will take Ridgefield to new heights this year. I think they'll close things out. They've won in the past, but I think, you know, for him, he's a guy, I know him all too well. He wants to win every single time he hits the field.
Well, it's unfortunate for Fairfield Ludlow. On April 9th, the Tigers will start their season against them. And I said they bring some guys back. Simon Matthias, one of those guys, had a big year last year.
He did, and he's going to UPenn, and he's got an incredible lacrosse stick, too. I mean, you watch Matthias and the way that he's able to kind of operate the offense. Another kid, a lot like Sutherland, where he's never rattled. He's a cool type kid behind the cage. He could play out in front of the goal as well. But his stick skills are his calling card. I watched him play over the summer as well, and I'm just so impressed at how smooth his stick is. I mean, you watch guys when you break down hoops quick that the ball looks like it's an extension of their arms. The stick looks like it's an extension of Matthias's arms too, because he's just so comfortable and cool with that stick.
Last year, I don't know which college game you were working, but you had said to me, keep me informed, let me know what's going on. So right away, you know it's going to be a Yorktown game. They were taking on our #1 Chaminade team at that point. That's before Ward Melville jumped Chaminade. The reason they jumped him is because Connor Veracruz and the Huskers that day put on a show. He elevated his game that day where he had Moran and the boys like, whoa, what just happened? He's another guy.
Yeah, you know what I like about him? Some offensive players, when they go against defenders, they're actually beating up the defenders, where the defender should be beating up the attackman. But he's so physical. He plays football. He's like a battering ram playing lacrosse. And you watch Veracruz, when he gets the ball on the right-hand side, he puts his shoulder down, and you better bring your lunch pail when you're guarding this kid, because he's so strong, he's so big, and he's got a cannon of a shot. I just think that if you don't have the right matchup for this kid, if you put an undersized kid or a kid who's just not wanting to get physical, he's going to beat you up, and he's an offensive player.
You are a huge believer in 2-sport, 3-sport kids. You love that. You think it helps the lacrosse kid a lot.
1000%. When I watch great college lacrosse players, almost all of them have done something else. I mean, you look at a kid like Veracruz, who's off to Rutgers. He was a great football player. I watched Matt Cavanaugh. You remember that kid?
Oh, yeah.
Matt Cavanaugh from Chaminade is going to be a first-team All-American probably this year as a sophomore. He had 7 goals yesterday in a game against Ohio State. You watch him around the goal, he's a hockey player. He knows how to operate, dip his shoulder, the body language, everything. So many great lacrosse players. Tommy Schreiber.
I was waiting for that.
Great football player. Charlie Rotham, great football player. He's crushing it at Maryland.
He replaced Tommy at quarterback at St. Anthony.
So to me, you can never replace competition too. Like when you step on the field on a Friday night and the lights are on, as much as I think you should be playing lacrosse and playing wall ball and shooting on your free time, which I would always kind of encourage, you can never replace competition. Knowing what it's like as an athlete when you're down, to rally the troops, to be part of a team. Not to mention all the things that you pick up playing other sports. Football, the physicality, the hockey's, the hand-eye coordination, hoops, the body positioning, soccer, full field. You know, it just goes on and on. The only sport I really can't make a connection with lacrosse is baseball. Sorry to tell you that.
Sorry, buddy. Well, that's why I hooked up with you, so I sound somewhat intelligent. When you were at Syracuse, were some of your favorite teammates football guys from high school?
Without question. I mean, you look at Casey Powell, who's one of the greatest players in lacrosse history, 3-sport guy, point guard in basketball, quarterback in football, lacrosse, absolute giant. I mean, you could argue he's on the Mount Rushmore of lacrosse stars. And the list went on and on. We had very few kids who just played the one sport, and it was just, to me, I thought, the play in the middle of the field, especially those midfielders. I mean, you want a guy that just knows how to bring it, can get a ground ball in a scrum and just make plays.
When I watched Austin Sims, who I think when you take a look at all the guys that you have on this, he may be the best athlete on this whole preseason look. If he had played wide receiver in football, he would be at least a 1AA receiver. His feet don't touch the ground. He moves around like a deer running through the woods when he sees headlights on a car. How good, and it seems like he's been at prep forever.
Yeah.
How good will he be at Princeton?
You know, you say those things too about him as a football kid, and yeah, I think if he grew up in Florida or Texas, he could probably return kicks.
Absolutely.
An incredible soccer player too. I mean, the big thing with Sims early on in his lacrosse career was he going to go play lacrosse in college or soccer, because he was an ODP type, Olympic development type player in soccer. But Sims absolutely flies all over the field. He's a great athlete. He does it with grace. I think the best offense for Sims is actually when he's on defense and you just let him punt return it. You pick up the ground ball and you put pressure on a team in transition and asking teams to stop him when it's full field type lacrosse and they have to make moves on the fly. You can't do it. I think the only way you can contain Sims is in the 6-on-6 half-field offense where you send defenders to him quickly because of his explosiveness, his ability to create offense. This kid is an old-school burner.
You know in hockey, like if a puck comes up, you're allowed to catch it and put it down real fast? Are you allowed to do that in lacrosse?
No.
You can't?
No.
Okay.
Can't use your hands.
Can't, because I can promise you this. I said that about Sims maybe being the best athlete. This next guy, I guarantee you can catch any lacrosse ball. Craig Burge is a flat-out, sensational football player. One of the top receivers on Long Island. I so enjoyed watching him play last year. The heart and soul of a very good Massapequa football team. Oh, that's right, heart and soul of a very good Massapequa lacrosse team as well.
Burge, you're talking about him as a football player, but guess what? He's actually a better lacrosse player. I think this, and I haven't really been entrenched in the Maryland scene, but I really don't care when I make this statement. Craig Burge is the best midfielder in high school lacrosse. And I mean that too, because he's so multi-dimensional. He's an incredible passer. You mentioned his wide receiver skills. He's so slippery too. I mean, I can see it. When I watched him play lacrosse over the last few years, the way he gets in and out of defenders, his ability to spot feed attackmen too. I mean, he had a ton of assists last year as a junior. I think he continues to do that. You put him on an offense with some finishers at Massapequa. This kid's game is absolutely limitless.
If you weren't running around all over the country last year with ESPN doing college football, you could have walked out your back door in Ridgefield up at the Carcaterra Mansion, gone down the path at Tiger Hollow, and seen this kid, Will Bonaparte, play football. Sensational football player, brings that toughness that we talked about, and that's a guy, and tell me, Colsey probably loves him because he might see a little bit of that Roy Colsey Yorktown football toughness in him.
Well, they call him Bones, and Bonaparte is just an old school midfielder too. And he faces off, plays offense, defense. You really don't see kids in this day and age, Quick, that face off and actually are studs on both ends. The Fogo position has become so specialized that kids are working on their craft 365 days a year, but Bones is a throwback. He'll face off, he'll play offense, he'll play defense. A lot like Sims, I think his best lacrosse is when he's making plays in the middle of the field, when he's not on the 6-on-6, when he picks up a ground ball and you just let him go and he flies. But an incredible athlete going to the University of Maryland. They'll find a spot for him. If he's not on the field offensively in the first year or two, I expect them to play him at short stick defensive midfielder where he can play both ends.
He was on Clark's second team last year at the end of the season. Jordan Walter, Cold Spring Harbor, I gotta be honest, don't know much about him.
I do. I mean, he's a skilled kid. He's going to Notre Dame, and I think he fits in with their offense really well now because Kevin Corrigan and Jerry Byrne at Notre Dame have done an incredible job of getting these big, strong athletes playing the position. I think Walter's more of a skilled guy, and you put him around some real big physical guys. I think his best lacrosse is yet to come. He's playing right now at Cold Spring Harbor. They're losing some midfielders. I think they need him to be the guy to compete in Class C, and I think Walter can do it just because of how skilled he is. He shoots the ball very well. He knows how to dodge and isolate from a one-on-one standpoint. He's a skilled kid.
There's a lot of crossover with football and lacrosse. Is there a lot with hockey?
There is, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think back at my days when I was coaching in Section 1 and helping out, there was a lot of kids at Fox Lane that were playing hockey and lacrosse, and I mentioned Kavanaugh to you and the Canadians. I mean, a lot of these Canadians who were just dominating Division I lacrosse were all hockey guys. I mean, I think that the stick skills, the hand-eye coordination is just huge.
A guy like me who, you know, we kind of parachute around and look at the top teams, and it's kind of, we want to showcase the top teams. So a guy like Brian Begley for the Colonials of Morristown, he could get lost in what we do. They were just 5-11 last year. But again, records don't mean it. This is all about individual performance. Why is he so good?
Because of what he does and the impact he makes on a field. I mean, when I watch this kid play, he plays tremendous defense from the midfield position, where that gets lost a lot of times. People think, oh, midfield score goals come off. This kid plays defense. He could play wings on face-off. He's phenomenal starting transition from the defensive end, and that's what's really interesting about this pack. These are a lot of two-way middies too, and in the past we've seen a lot of specialist type kids that like to play offense. Begley's the type of kid though, you rewind a tape 20, 30 years ago, he could play on a field then, he could play on a field now, because you can never underestimate the impact of a midfielder playing defense, scooping ground balls, and I don't care what his stats are either. I just look at impact on the field. When you see a kid move a certain way, make plays in between the restraining lines, not to mention he can start offense too, and he's going to Loyola. And I think Loyola is one of those schools, you mentioned the early recruiting, they get these Begley type of kids late in the process. They might have got him a little bit earlier, but you know, Charlie Toomey, Matt Dwan get these late kids that people pass up on, and all they do is win. They're #1 in the nation right now.
Junkyard dogs,
yeah,
man.
Exactly.
That's what they are. Kirk, I would say that since you stopped playing, it's safe to say that you've probably seen over 1,000 lacrosse games since you stopped playing?
Couldn't even count, man. People make fun of me too quick because I'm always on my computer now. You could stream games almost anywhere, right. And it's just it's amazing the opportunities that you have watching the game of lacrosse, and with technology and everything that's available for us, it's not just a TV thing now, man. You're on your computer and watching highlights of kids and just endless. But I love it, man. It's in my DNA.
So it's safe when you're sitting in your big office looking at it on the computer, right?
Yeah,
you don't get hit by a lacrosse ball in the mansion, right?
The mansion.
Let me ask you a question. When you were a player, and obviously as you're moving around on the field, you're going to get hit by a ball.
Yeah.
What hurt more, when you were a player and got hit by a ball, or now as you do your job if you happen to get hit by a ball?
Without question now. I'm like a little scaredy cat. When I was a player, I just, you know, you'd be on offense. I got hit by a lot of balls with teammates shooting in practice and hitting you in the legs and the shins and all over your shoulders and stuff. But in the game, you don't really think about that. Or in practice, it's part of the game. But now I walk around, it's because it's like to be hit with a foreign object. It's been so long. So my head's always on a swivel. Don't give kids any ideas, by the way.
Would you rather get hit by a ball or Don Bosco's Mike D'Alessandro?
Oh, well, we talked about him from a football standpoint. And I'm talking to his coach, Mike Springer, in the preseason, and he said D'Alessandro, he calls him Del, is an absolute beast. He said, Paul, you know, I just haven't seen many kids on a lacrosse field move the way that this kid does in the scrimmages in the preseason. I mean, he's a man amongst boys. He got hurt in football, so Springer told me he had his stick in his hand all the time.
He actually got hurt in lacrosse.
In lacrosse, but he missed the football season.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. He got, told Mike me to say that, right? Yeah. No, but yeah, so he played all off season, stick drills and playing a ton of wall ball, and his stick skills are now at another level because he was always that raw athlete that can make plays. But now Springer said he's skilled, and he's going to go down to North Carolina. We talked about all the prize recruits they have. They don't have athletes like D'Alessandro. Coach Bresci, when he steps onto campus, is going to welcome D'Alessandro with open arms because he plays day one. It might not be on the first midfield, but he'll be on a wing on face-off. He'll be playing defense because physically he's a beast.
So how does that work at the college level? So he's going to get money to go play for the Tar Heels, but he wants to walk onto the football team. So let's say he makes the football team. How does that work, like in the spring? With his commitment, he would still have to play lacrosse, and then he would miss spring football, right?
Yes, but, you know, from my understanding, and you can't put me to the fire with this, but if you are playing football or basketball, and you make that team and you play another sport, the scholarship has to be in football or basketball. Okay. The reason they do that, because if, you know, some of these schools would put a kid on a bowling scholarship and he's your punt returner. So it makes perfect sense. So if he makes that team in football, he's going to get a football scholarship. He'll have to play spring lacrosse and not play spring ball.
Why does Harvard seemingly get so many more players than Yale?
You know, that's a good question, but they're not developing the players like Yale. Yale's won the last 2 Ivy Leagues, and Coach Shea and Graham Nemi have done an incredible job. And I like Chris Wojcik up at Harvard, too, and you got to give him a little bit more time because he hasn't been there as long. But, you know, Yale is recruiting a different type of a kid, a less of a high-profile type kid, under-the-radar recruit. A kid like Brandon Mangan years ago, who's out on Long Island, who's now one of the best players in the Ivy League and scoring a ton of goals for Yale. He probably wasn't recruited by Harvard.
It's got to be tough for a school like Mendham High School, a great school, great in all sports, but when you're in Morris County and you play lacrosse, you're always going to be in the shadows of Del Barton and Mountain Lakes. And here's Mendham, Will Robinson, a junior, and I brought up Yale because that's where he's going. And here's Mendham, 9 and 10 last year, don't get a lot of ink.
I saw Will Robinson 2 summers ago play, and absolute stud. I mean, can initiate, breaks a defense down. His first step is fantastic, but he also has the size of a college lacrosse player. He will be an all Ivy League midfielder without question, Robinson. Because of his ability to break a defense down, his size. I know Coach Nemi, the assistant coach at Yale, we were talking in the offseason about Robinson, and he just loves this kid's upside. He said he's an absolute stud. He'll play for us day one because of his athletic ability.
I asked you about Colsey before. How was Springer in the offseason?
Springer in the offseason, it's been a couple tough years for Mike Springer in terms of the way that these seasons have ended. 2 years ago against Del Barton, when they were up by 4 goals with a minute plus, and last year losing in the state title championship game in New Jersey. You know, I think this big game experience has helped Springer and the boys, because now, I mean, he's got that carrot in front of these kids right now, because they still haven't really closed it out. They've made jumps. They've won their league state championship in Jersey. You got all these different state championships. I don't get it, but at the end they do the tournament of champions, and that's the one that I think he really wants, when they bring all the big boys together and one walks away. So he still has to close out and get that.
Well, the reason I asked you that was because Ridge broke his heart last year. Kevin Quigley's back, going to play for, you know, one of your favorite guys. How well did you know John Danowski before you started doing all the ESPN stuff and everything?
I didn't know him at all, and he's one of my favorite guys. We have conference calls with him when we do games, and he's got music playing in the background. We joke around. This guy Danowski is more of a psychologist than a coach to me. And the way that he's able to map out a season for his kids and not burn them out and still have fun. You can't downplay the importance of that in terms of being a coach, because he gets it. He understands the grind day in and day out that these kids have to deal with. And, you know, I just think Danowski's the perfect guy for a place like Duke. I mean, he's won 2 of the last 4 national titles. How could you argue that?
Now, they don't, because when I think of Duke and I think around here, you know, our buddy Case Mathias is there. They do an unbelievable job recruiting Long Island. They don't go into New Jersey that much, do they? This Kevin Quigley from Ridge, is that a little different for them?
It is, but Quigley, you know, and this is a little bit of a reach, I'm not going to lie to you, because he's a young kid. He's only a sophomore. But I saw him play in the summer, and I just walked away wowed. And, you know, he verbaled to Duke last summer going into his sophomore year, and he is just an absolute stud. I think physically he moves so well. He can shoot on the run, where a lot of young midfielders, when they're freshmen or sophomores, they can shoot on the run, but they can't do it when it's totally in stride. And when he shoots on the run, it's like that poetry in motion type thing where he doesn't break stride. And I just think he's going to be an absolute beast for years to come. And I think this sophomore year, you'll look at him as one of the best midfielders in New Jersey.
I like the size Christian Zawadzki has for Smithtown West, 6'2", 180 pounds. When you look at it, that sounds to me like a very good athlete.
Matchup nightmare, too. I mean, I looked at the scores from early in the season this year. He's tearing it up already. I mean, scoring 3 goals in that win that they had earlier in the year against Garden City. And I think that Zawadzki is just physically using his size to an advantage. I think the biggest challenge for him moving forward would be to continue to be that physical beast. And I think when he goes down to Maryland with that frame at 6'2", he'll be 6'2", 205 in no time, and continue to be a physical specimen at the midfield position and a goal scorer.
One of the toughest decisions you had to make last year, and it's ironic that we're right here at Wilton High School when you got to the Fogo position, and you wanted to put this in a couple years ago because it's become such a huge position in this sport, and you had to make a decision. Teddy Ottens from Wilton High School, he was the first team. Second team, James Sullivan from Garden City, who's more than just a Fogo, because he stays on the field as well. Yeah,
James Sullivan, to me, is a little bit of like that Bonaparte type kid from Ridgefield, where he stays on the field. Probably not as skilled offensively as Bones from Ridgefield, but I look at Sullivan as an absolute game changer. I mean, they win the state title his freshman year, and you can argue down the stretch. I mean, you had Devin Dwyer, who was just amazing for them. But outside of Dwyer, he might have been the MVP, because no team could go on a run. When they beat Yorktown in the state semifinals, Yorktown had some pop, had some life in that game, but they never had the ball in crucial moments in that second quarter when he just dominated, and then they win the state title. I mean, Sullivan is an absolute beast of a face-off man. He's not like one of those huge guys, too. I think he's just a master of his technique, and he can play off of breaks, too. I mean, Teddy Otten showed us later in his career that he could start some fast breaks and generate offense. I think Sullivan, you'll see his numbers increase. They're going to need more than just face-off at him.
When you played in the dark ages, was that such a big position? Was there even such a thing?
No, we just grabbed our midfielders and said go. And you know, the best thing about back then is when a midfielder dominated, you really could kind of counter them. You could put a long pole out there and just kind of beat them up and go for a 50-50 ground ball. The face-off position now is so specialized. These kids are so good that it doesn't work just throwing a long pole to stop a kid like a Teddy Ottens or a James Sullivan, because they're quick with their wrists, they pop it, they can put the ball where they want it, and it's almost impossible to stop when you get a kid that good.
Sullivan has company in your preseason. Henningsen from Northport, and Northport, with the components they have, if they're winning faceoffs, they're going to score a lot of goals.
You know, and the ACC in lacrosse right now is like SEC football on steroids, because you got 6 of the top 8 schools preseason in college lacrosse from the ACC, and they all bring big boy face-off players. And I think Henningsen, when he goes to Maryland in a couple of years, he's only a junior right now, he's going to fit that mold. He'll go to Maryland once Rafa leaves, who's the St. Anthony's star, who's at Maryland right now, and who's a Fogo. So I think his timing is perfect. He'll play really early in his career. You know, on Long Island right now, I think he's the guy. He's the guy on top of the mountain right now from a face-off standpoint, and everyone wants to take him down.
When you think of Yorktown lacrosse, obviously the leading name in the history of Yorktown lacrosse is Charlie Murphy. But when you think of all the brothers and all the great players, what's like the leading family of Yorktown lacrosse? Is there one that stands out more than all others?
You know, I think there's probably a few. I mean, you look at generations. In the 80s, you had the Nelsons, who went off to Syracuse and were all Americans and some of the top scorers. And then in the 90s, you know, I was part of a family where I had 2 great brothers. I'll give more of the credit to my 2 brothers than me. I mean,
but they ain't hosting this segment.
Yeah, exactly. Then you had the Mars, Scott Marr, Dave Marr, the Kavovits. You had Rob Kavovit, Steve Kavovit, Greg Kavovit. So it's almost just there's like a plethora of them. I mean, there's so many, and that's what made Yorktown lacrosse special. I mean, when I said my family, we were just one of, you know, 5 or 6 families in that decade that could probably stake claim to being part of such a great tradition.
Another Fusco boy coming through doing it with the big
dad. His dad was part of 80s lacrosse too.
See, I tried to set you up there.
His dad.
So now Austin running around with the big stick.
Absolutely. He's going to Syracuse, and this kid is got energy. He's got pop when he plays too. And he's a tireless worker. I love his attitude. He's an old school defenseman, and he's being trained by Rob Dorr, who's one of the best defensemen in Yorktown history. He was a first-team All-American at Johns Hopkins. He's the defensive coach there now. And Rob Dorr was as mean, as tough as defender as ever. And Fusco had that in him already. And now this is like gasoline to a fire, working with Dorr, because I think Fusco has a chip on his shoulder. He's extraordinarily athletic. He can play wings on face-offs. I think he's more of a long-stick midfielder down the road, but right now he'll play close defense. Regardless, he'll have the team's top matchup. And with their schedule, he's going to see plenty of studs.
Did Tommy Wright get on the field much last year for Garden City?
Well, Tommy Wright got on the field a ton as a freshman for Garden City. He was one of the few freshmen 2 years ago when they won the state title that made plays. And Tommy Wright is a lot like Fusco in terms of his versatility. He can play close defense, he can play long stick. I think he's a long stick midfielder as well. He'll go off to Penn State in a couple years and play for Coach Jeff Tambroni and be part of a great recruiting coup from the Long Island area. Young kids going to Penn State throughout the course of the Northeast. He's doing a good job identifying talent in Long Island. I think it's a big get for Tambroni too, because you don't see a ton of Garden City kids going to Penn State, but he's their guy on defense.
You like mean dudes, right?
Yes,
tough
defensively.
Dudes,
yes, lunch pail.
Like slapshot type guys, like the movie Slapshot. Chad Otterman, if you want to watch him play lacrosse, you're going to have probably until about May, maybe early June, because he's going to go off, be a great hockey player in college at Cornell. But man, he brings I wouldn't want to get this guy mad, because he brings an intensity like so few.
You know, you look at what they had defensively last year, Dale Barton, with guys like him and Will Reynolds. I mean, that's one of the best defenses in the country, man for man. But Otterman is just an absolute stud. We're only going to get to see him play lacrosse a little bit longer. If I'm Cornell, when he's done with hockey season, I don't care how little time left he has, give him a lacrosse stick and let him play another season of lacrosse because he's that good. They're spoiled defensively down there. I'm going to be honest with you. The way that they get these kids and how big of studs they are athletically, guys like, you know, Otterman and Reynolds. And we got another guy, too.
Yeah, I mean, Peter, let's face it, if you beat them,